If you ever played a Yakuza / Like a Dragon game before, you probably know that you can consume various alcoholic beverages in the game. And what happens when you had one too many? You get wasted. So today we're going to find out if you can beat LAD Infinite Wealth if the entire party is made up of raging alcoholics. But what does the drunk status even do? Fully drunk party members can do one of three things. Either they will act like normal and you can use all kinds of attacks and skills, or party members will randomly attack any enemy, or the worst case, they will just simply not care and do nothing. And while that already sounds pretty painful, the upside to this is that the drunk status also increases a character's critical rate, if you get the chance to attack, that is. There is a bit more to the drunk mechanic that we will go through as the run progresses, but for now, let's take a look at the rules of the run. Party members are not allowed to attack enemies or cast buffs and debuff skills unless they are fully drunk. If they are still somewhat sober, the only allowed actions are everything that increases your drunkenness level, healing, or guarding. The exception to this is the rage status, since it's gonna override the drunk status and makes party members attack automatically, and I really don't feel like having to reset every time we get bad RNG. Tag team attacks are allowed as long as all party members involved in the attack are fully drunk as well. Furthermore, we must complete all drinking links of every party member, because why else would we even do this run? We also ban pound mates since those are sober, which is something we don't appreciate in this kind of setup. And of course, we also ban New Game Plus, and that is pretty much all there is to it. We start the game, go through the opening cutscenes at Hello Work, and have to fight Sasaki first. I was checking whether or not we can already interact with restaurants or buy anything with alcohol, but at this point the game is still locked, and considering we have to go through the tutorials first anyways, it probably wouldn't have worked even if we had the chance. Theoretically, you could also just mod the game to have all party members permanently drunk, but since I got this game for my PS5, this is not an option, and to be honest, it would also take away from certain strategies that could come into play later on. Once we regain control of Ichiban, the first thing we do is to run to Gindaku Highball Tavern. This is one of many restaurants that sells alcohol, so by buying 3 alcoholic beverages, we officially get wasted for the first time in this run. We also head to Popo to buy a couple of cup sakes and bottle sakes. These are the only 2 alcoholic beverages that we can carry in our inventory for now, so we want to make sure to have a somewhat decent stock of them. Since we only start off with 10,000 yen, we can't even fill up our inventory, so we start exploring the city for items which we can sell off at the pawn shop. Ideally, we find silver plates here, since those sell for 10,000 yen apiece. I don't think you can get gold or platinum plates at this point yet, and if you can, the chance is probably ridiculously low, so we try to get as much money as possible so we can fill up our inventory with alcohol. Since we haven't progressed the story any further yet, there are no random enemies spawning in the city, which makes looking for items quite a bit more comfortable. Once we have everything we need for now, we continue on with the game story. On the way to the bar, we run into a couple of thugs, and with that we officially have our first fully drunken fight. At least that's what I thought of, but the game immediately cures Ichiban from his alcohol addiction and sends us through another tutorial teaching us how to use our surroundings, so yeah, so much for that. Afterwards, we immediately head back to our favorite restaurant and get drunk yet again. We also get into our first random encounter here and are finally able to show off how the drunk status works. Like mentioned earlier, we have 3 possible outcomes with a fully drunk party member. Either we can act completely normal, Ichiban targets a random enemy, or just does absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, the drunk status automatically wears off on the 3rd turn, so if the battle is not won until then, we have to spend 3 additional turns to get Ichi back to drunk before being able to do damage again. And I think it's relatively easy to see that this could become a major issue rather quickly. Ideally, we want to end fights before the status is gone, or otherwise it will take quite a while before we're able to get it back up again. After a battle, the drunk status is always reduced by 1 stage, so if we manage to beat an encounter fully drunk, we only need to apply 1 more stage to be completely wasted again. Considering we only have a very limited supply of usable alcoholic drinks, this will become very important rather soon. We head to the bar to meet up with the old party and, you might have guessed it, have a couple of drinks. After a rather unsuccessful date with Sai, Ichiban gets fired thanks to the Tatara channel, and we have to beat up a bunch of influencers trying to make a quick buck off of him. And here you can see the problem with this kind of setup. We have to beat a total of 6 enemies using only Ichiban, with him having no access to any AoE attacks yet, and only getting a maximum of 2 attacks in per drunk cycle if we're lucky. We are running into problems rather quickly. While most of the enemies can be taken out with a single hit, we get attacked several times each turn, and by the time we set up our second drunk cycle, Ichiban is pretty much done already, and we get our first game over here. On the second try, we get luckier and are able to knock out several enemies with a single tenacious fist before having to chalk down more sake to get drunk again. But even with this kind of good RNG, we're having huge struggles. If you remember the rules, I mentioned that characters are still allowed to heal even when not fully drunk, and this is pretty much the prime example of why we implemented this rule. We already had pretty good RNG early in the fight, and still would be nowhere near tanky enough to get through here. I think it's fair to only allow attacks, buffs and debuffs while fully drunk, but we need to make an exception for heals since I am rather sure that the run would be over rather early into the challenge otherwise. Anyways, once we're fully drunk again, we get rid of the last enemy and are able to continue on. We head back to Popo to stack up on drinks, and shortly afterwards both Namba and Adachi join the party. Ichiban becomes a hero yet again, and with a 3-man party available now, we're having a much easier time getting through encounters, at least the easy random ones in the streets of Yokohama. Up next, we should sneak into the Sereio headquarters, but before we do that, we play a bit of Shogi. Admittedly, I have no idea how to play Shogi, but the puzzle Shogi at least is free if you look up the answers online. As for the reason why we do those, the Shogi Hobo technically sells books that raise each of our characters' default job rank by 1. Namba's homeless job has an incredibly useful skill at rank 10, which is Stash Bottle. Not only is that a very strong healing spell which inflicts all characters within an area, it also raises everybody's drunkenness level by 1. This would drastically reduce the amount of items we need, and considering that the next couple of segments are all a bit longer, I really don't see any other way that we can get through this without running out of items way too early. While we could technically just grind all our way to job rank 10, with the current enemies available, this would probably take like 20 hours or so we prefer the way via Shogi guy. Those of you who have actually played Puzzle Shogi though, might remember that we get nowhere near enough points to get the amount of books needed. This is where a slight oversight on the developer's part comes in very handy. Usually each stage is only supposed to give you points the first time you beat it. However, if you just cancel out of the game after already receiving the points, but before confirming the message, the game never marks the puzzle as completed, and you can just redo it over and over again for maximum points every single time. We use this to not only get 5 books for the homeless job, but also 5 for the hero and 5 for the detective. Since we already grinded the job rank 5 with everybody before, we can now get each party member's job all the way up to level 10. Like mentioned before, this was mostly for Stash Bottle and Namba, but if we already got the chance to do some easy grinding here, might as well also take the other party members with us. We also stopped by the Love Magic shop to buy a slight upgrade to everybody's weapons. Being able to beat enemies quickly is very important, so the extra 5 to 10ish attack might make quite a difference in the end. With this out of the way, we can finally advance in the main story, jump down the sewers, and evade the Sereio headquarters through there. The plan for the majority of encounters here is to beat them within 2 turns, therefore only losing 1 stage of drunkenness after. In the following battle, we just open up with Stashed Bottle, try to have everybody in range, and with that we can get the entire party drunk with a single action, therefore not only saving items, but also making sure we can reapply the status as effectively as possible. Once Namba runs out of MP, we can just feed him with more alcohol to fill him up again, and repeat the same process in the following battles. This works out pretty well, and we can make our way into Sereio HQ without wasting too many items in the process. Another big help at this point is Ichiban's Mega Swing. Thanks to the extra job levels, we have a decent means of dealing AoE damage, which helps immensely when it comes to getting through battles quickly. Of course, with the drunk status, this is not guaranteed, and more often than not, we get sober again before being able to throw it out, but every bit can help. If we're not able to beat enemies before the party sobers up again, it usually takes quite a while considering we need to reapply the status to every single party member again before we're able to attack. Thanks to Stashed Bottle, we also don't have to be afraid to game over since it pretty much fully heals everybody in range. We are still rather early into the Sereio HQ, but already consumed quite a bit of alcohol, so there might be a decent chance that we have to start it all over again in case we get bad luck with drunkenness RNG. Luckily, we're about to fight the final battle for this segment against the Sereio clan officer. And once again, the entire party automatically gets sobered up, so the supposed help of the game actually puts us at a rather big disadvantage. Again, we use stashed bottle and items to build up our drunkenness quickly. Thanks to the upgraded weapons, we do pretty decent damage and can get into phase 2 of the battle rather quickly. At this point though, more Yakuza get summoned, and with us having only a very limited supply of alcohol, we could run into problems quickly. While checking my items, I came up with another idea though. Earlier we talked about how the drunk status only lasts 2 turns and automatically runs out afterwards. And while we cannot prolong the duration of the status with more alcohol, we can use drinks to slightly lower their level and then get it back up again. This way, we can prevent always having to put up 3 stages of drunkenness before being able to attack again. And while this may kinda go against the spirit of the run a little, it does make managing the drunk status quite a bit easier, especially early on where our options are rather limited. With that, we have little issues finishing the rest of the battle off, and after meeting the new Sereio chairman Ebina, we get the tutorial about Sujimons. Unlike previous tutorials though, this one does not fully cleanse the party of any ailments, so we can just beat the battle normally without any further issues. Before leaving for Hawaii, we once again make a quick detour by the Shogi guide to cheese some more points and get ourselves some Desperado revolvers. This not only is a 5-star weapon for a very important job class later on, but it also helps out with our money issues quite a bit. While we can't get any money directly at the Shogi guy, we can buy revolvers for points, which we can then sell off at the pawn shop for some decent early money. This is not something we absolutely need to, but I'd rather have backup plans in case we need some quick cash later on. We store all our items in the item box, deposit all our money onto our ATM card, and then are ready to head for Hawaii for good. We meet Eiji, basically get dropped as soon as we land, and have to fight Tomisawa next. Luckily, we were able to fully carry over our drunk status from Japan all the way to Hawaii, so we can easily beat him before the status even runs out. Once we roll Eiji around town, we have to fight another set of lowlifes. For every encounter that consists of multiple enemies, we hope to get to freely choose our attack since Mega Swing is a huge help in situations like this, and we want to avoid having to waste 3 extra turns to get wasted before being able to get some damage in again, especially if we have to run a solo Ichiban segment. Shortly after, we meet Yamai and now have to battle him and his goons. We drink some more sake to get our drunk status up again, and on our second action are able to Mega Swing our way to victory to head into the actual battle of the segment against Yamai himself. Wasting 3 turns every time we need to set up our wasted condition sucks, but luckily Yamai doesn't do a whole lot of damage, especially if Eiji buffs Ichiban's defense. Since we're only dealing with a single target here, it's not as important whether we can freely choose our attack or not, we just want to avoid wasting turns by having Ichiban not care. And even in the case where we get low on HP, Eiji is there to heal Ichiban, so there is basically no way we can lose this fight. The only thing I am kind of afraid of is horrible RNG while drunk, so there is some potential that we are running out of items before we're able to finish the fight. We get a bit unlucky and get a full drunk cycle where we're not able to attack a single time, but luckily we're still able to finish the battle off with 3 bottled sakes remaining. The following day we head to Akane's house, Chitose spikes our drink, and Ichiban wakes up at the beach butt ass naked. After escaping the police, we meet Kiryu and have to go through another tutorial explaining Kiryu's job actions, where once again, we automatically get sobered up and are not able to get drunk again before finishing the tutorial. We head into Revolver and get our introduction to drinking links, and those are important because if you remember the rules, we must max every character's drinking link, because how else would this run even be valid? We grab all the items from the item box that we stored in Japan, get our money back, and are now able to stack up on alcohol in Hawaii. We still have the stored alcohol from Japan, but ideally we want to mostly use items that we can restock, so we're starting to raid all the supermarkets for more alcohol. Each shop usually only sells 1 or 2 different types of alcohol, so we have to run around quite a bit to get all items available. This will become easier once we get access to the liquor shop later on, but for now, this is our only option. Once that is done, we return to Akane's place where we once again run into Yamai and his goons. Tomisawa decides to join the party, and we get our 3rd official party member. In the battle itself, Ichiban's Mega Swing again does good work when we get to use it. Unfortunately, this is literally the only thing we're able to do before soberness sets in, so we once again have to get the entire party drunk before being able to continue on. And with now 3 different party members, we burn through our alcohol resources rather quickly. In this setup, it already takes a total of 9 items to get the entire party drunk a single time, and considering we can only carry 10 of each beverage, there is only so much wiggle room we have before we start running out of items. Once the fight is over, Tomisawa officially joins the party, and we can continue on. After restocking our alcohol resources, we're trying to upgrade both Ichiban's and Tomisawa's weapons. Thanks to the revolvers from earlier, we got a decent amount of money available to upgrade their equipment to 3-star weapons. Again, the main purpose for those is to cut down the duration of most fights. If we can beat enemies within 2 turns, this saves a lot of drinking resources which are still very sparse, so for longer segments especially, I figured that we're going to optimize our strategy as much as possible, so we don't have to rely on good drunk RNG for too much. We get the tutorial for pound mates, but as explained in the rules, those are all sober and therefore not wanted in this kind of challenge, so we're not going to pay any attention to those. Up next, we head to the bar where we are on the lookout for a police officer who seemingly can help us get into District 5, and of course we have to battle him first. Again, we have to fight a couple of different enemies here, so ideally we want to try to get either Mega Swing or Tomi's Tire Tumbler in to take out several enemies at once. With the new weapons, both Ichiban and Tomisawa deal very good damage to the enemies, so the ads are quickly taken care of. The boss Roman is weak to electricity, so Tomisawa's battery shock deals huge amounts of damage to the boss. With the ads being gone, the battle really is not a big issue, and we're able to finish him off once we got everybody wasted again. Back at Revolver, we store all our alcohol in our item box and stack up several times. I expect us to run out of beverages rather quickly once we enter District 5, but the majority of save points during longer segments usually have an item box with them, so this way we can restock our inventory once we get low on alcohol. We get the introduction to Julie's gearworks, but for the time being, our equipment is decent enough that we don't really need to pay too much attention here. Down the line, upgrading and branding weapons could become pretty useful, but for now our options are rather limited anyways, so we just continue on. We also get the Sujimon tutorial and have to battle our way through the intro fight here as well. The Sujimonster chop isn't really any useful in this setup, and considering you can't get your Sujimons drunk at all, this is another thing we won't really pay attention to in this challenge. With the party now having full access to the entire map, we can also start visiting the local Fiesta shop. Until now, we had to go through several supermarkets to get all kinds of different alcohol, but with local Fiesta, we have a single shop that offers all booze available in Hawaii, so this makes things quite a bit more comfortable as well. After we're done with everything, we are now ready to head into District 5. This is going to be a rather long segment, and with the party needing to be constantly drunk, we are probably going to burn through our booze rather quickly, so let's hope we can at least make it to the first mid-save, at which point we should be able to restock using the item box. The majority of fights are like before. Ideally, we want to get a free action turn with either Ichiban or Tomisawa to take several enemies out with AoE attacks, and generally end the fight before anybody's drunk status runs out. Grabbing the 3-star weapons for both of them was definitely a good choice, as they are strong enough to usually one-shot the majority of enemies, so if we can get them to group up, taking them out in time is usually not a big issue. One slight problem we got is that we often can't get the entire body drunk again after a battle. You can only use items outside of battle if the character's MP are not maxed, so more often than not, we can only set up Ichiban and Tomisawa outside of battle, and then have to use another turn within the next battle to get Kiryu up again. This is not the biggest issue, but a slight inconvenience since I'd rather be able to go all out from turn 1 already. Luckily, I quickly found a solution for this. We can equip accessories outside of battle which raise a character's max MP. Since the current MP stay the same, we can use that to always get all characters drunk again after a battle, and once the boost is down, we just switch the accessories back to the initial ones before engaging into the next battle. Once we made it through the first section, we meet up with Chitose again, and with her joining the party, we get a full set of 4 characters for the first time. Here is where I noticed something much more problematic though. The first save point, unlike expected, does not have an item box accompanied with the heal and the save points. I was fully anticipating being able to restock our items, but with a rather limited amount of alcohol, and a 4th party member now joining as well, I am not sure our alcohol stock is going to be able to carry us all the way through the segments. Because of this, I made the decision to keep Chitose sober for now and just guard with her when her turn comes up. If we want to make it all the way to the end, we definitely need to be very careful with managing our boost, and considering that she doesn't have any AoE attack options currently available, and also a rather weak weapon compared to Ichiban and Tomisawa, I figured this is the best way to go forward. With that, we drunkenly punch our way through the underground until we run into the mini-boss fight against the fashion guys. And here we already run into the next problem. The party gets auto-healed, so we have to start getting everybody drunk from scratch again. Keeping in mind that I'm starting to run out of items, I decided to only use Ichiban and Tomisawa for this fight, since their AoE options are probably the most efficient way to get through this. And if this wasn't enough, the very same thing happens when we transition into the actual mini-boss fight against the Barracuda Rapper and his 2 hitman minions. Again, we keep Kiryu and Chitose sober while the other 2 get wasted and try to get damage in. Since we are luckily allowed to heal with sober party members, Chitose can heal the party up if needed, and thanks to our weapon damage and the boss's weakness to ice, the battle is easily taken care of thanks to Scrub Down, which one-shots the mini-boss from full HP. But we are not done with this segment yet. We are now in the Crystal Aloha Resort and need to make our way up to the top floor, going through several more encounters in the process. At this point I was really starting to question if this is even possible, even in a setup where we only have 2 drunk characters at all times. We burned through 80% of our booze at this point already, so I really hope we can make it to the final save point before we run out of items. As for battles, it's just like before. We hope to get in normal turns with Ichiban and Tomisawa, and try to take out as many enemies as possible using Mega Swing and Tire Tumbler. Eventually, we made it to the final save point, and who would have thought, just like before, we don't have any item box here, so once again we have no options to restock our alcohol. At this point we barely have any drinks left, but luckily there is only one more battle left to go, so unless we get really unlucky with drunk RNG, we should be able to power through. That being said, the next fight is against Dwight and his goons. Again we guard with Kiryu and Chitose, and hope to get good damage in with Ichiban and Tomisawa. The goons are taken care of rather quickly with a Mega Swing, which only leaves the boss on the battlefield. And then something happened which totally destroyed all my hopes for this fight. Dwight uses Death Glare, which can potentially fear the entire party. And while that in itself wouldn't be the biggest issue yet, the fear status overrides our drunk state, so we basically have to start from scratch again. And if we get unlucky, he can just go for it again and basically erase all progress we have made. The second time, Ichiban was luckily able to dodge, which is something at least. After Tomisawa was still feared and Ichiban's drunk status ran out, I decided to quit out of the game and try again with a new strategy, since I was pretty sure this was not gonna go anywhere. On our second attempt, I ignored the ads when Tomisawa's turn came up. Dwight is weak against ice attacks, so I figured if we can get a chance to use Scrub Down with Tomisawa, the battle might become quite a bit more manageable, because the faster we get rid of Dwight, the less chances he has to fear the party, and this was definitely a good call as the attack does over 400 damage onto the boss. Unfortunately, the Death Glare still hit Tomisawa, but Ichiban's Bat Breaker also deals decent damage to the boss. In order to make sure that Ichiban's drunk status doesn't run out completely, we throw items to reduce it by one stage, and then immediately get it back up again in order to save a couple of more items and also turns in the process. Once we got Tomisawa wasted as well, we can go back to work. We ignore the last remaining ad for the most part and focus on getting Dwight down first. Since the incoming damage is very manageable, we can easily target our attacks at the main boss, and another Scrub Down and Bat Breaker is enough to beat him. Afterwards, it's just clearing up the last enemy, and we successfully complete the battle with 4 bottles of alcohol left. While it did get pretty close towards the end due to not being able to restock items, we still had some slight leeway in case things wouldn't have worked out the way it did. Chitose joins the party permanently, and we get the next tutorial to Drinking Links. With Chitose unlocked, we can also get the next couple of bond bingos, and after restocking our alcohol, we continue on with the main story. We head to Polycana for the first time, and after running some errands that include a couple of more random encounters, we finally get to unlock the Aloha Happy side story, and with it, the ability to unlock new jobs. And this is easily the biggest game changer of the entire run. There are 2 specific jobs we want to get as soon as possible. The first one being the Action Star, and the second one being the Desperado. Both jobs have attacking skills that also increase the character's drunkenness level, so with those unlocked, we can theoretically start attacking enemies even if the party member is not fully wasted yet, since the rules allow the use of all actions that increase a character's drunkenness level. While we don't have enough style in Ichiban yet to unlock the Desperado, we can immediately access the Action Star. Unfortunately, there is not a single job for female characters with a drunk increasing skill, so we still have to go the casual way by getting them wasted by alcohol. As we progress through the game, I expect the female characters taking on some kind of healing job and mostly function as a healer since we're allowed to do that even without being drunk, so going forward, the male characters will become the heavy hitters. And while we have unlocked the Action Star already, we basically got no proper weapons for it. If you remember earlier, we got ourselves a couple of 5-star revolvers during the Puzzle Shogi exploit, which would be great weapons for the Desperado, so instead of switching over to the Action Star, we try to get Ichiban style to rank 5 in order to get access to the Desperado. Once that is done, we switch over all male characters and try to get some job experience on them. Our desired skill Bourbon Buster is unlocked once they reach rank 12, so we're going to grind quite a bit of overworld encounters before we continue on with the story. We have also gotten 2 antique coins in the meantime, which is an accessory that raises job experience gained for the Desperado, so with that we can slightly cut down the grinding time until we get the desired result. Considering the next mandatory story part is the underground dungeon, I wanted to make sure that we reach rank 12 before we go in there, since this is another somewhat decently long dungeon we have to go through in one sitting. Unfortunately, I made a slight mistake here. I was running into the Polycana cutscene thinking that it would place the party in front of the dungeon, with us still having an opportunity to do other things before entering, but unfortunately, once you trigger the cutscene, you'll get thrown into the dungeon immediately. While the party is only at job rank 9 at this point, I still went in regardless, considering that we should have enough items to get us through this segment, and there is a good chance that the party will reach rank 12 sometime during dungeon progression anyways. With our overpowered 5-star weapons, we basically breeze through the majority of random encounters, so unless we get super unlucky and all characters don't act, the chance to lose the drunk status mid-battle is very low. And while we were not able to quite reach rank 12 before fighting the mid-dungeon boss just yet, thanks to our equipment, the enemies should not be a big issue for the most part anyways. While the enemies resist gun attacks, we can use Poisoned Cloudburst to deal decent damage and even get a poison proc in if we're lucky. The chugging pass attack is annoying since it can stun a character, which once again overrides the drunk status, but other than that the battle is not too tricky, and a few poisoned cloud bursts later, we beat the enemy and also conveniently get to rank 12 right afterwards. With Bourbon Buster now available on 3 out of 4 characters and 5-star weapons in possession, I expect the next couple of segments to be rather easy. We continue on with the Palakana segment until we run into the next encounter to test out our newly acquired skill. And while Bourbon Buster is only single target, you can still see how much easier the game becomes at this point. We easily one-shot all the enemies and also easily beat the mini-boss without any issues. After creating a viral video for Ichiban, we run into some strange creatures and end up on Dondoko Island. And this is where we're going to spend the next couple of hours at. While we could just return to the main story after the tutorial, we're going to do the entire minigame all the way until the end. While this is going to take quite a while, there are 2 reasons as to why we're doing this. First of all, we want to get the essence of Dondoko Beam attack for Ichiban, which is a rather strong AoE magic and lightning attack that hits all enemies and can deal pretty big damage. The even more important part though is obviously the money aspect. By completing all stages of Dondoko Island, you get $500,000. As mentioned earlier, we don't have any weapons for the action star yet, so that money will go towards getting a 5-star weapon for all party members, so we can also make good use of the second drunk inducing job as well. And while we watch the last bits of Dondoko Island, here is a quick reminder to please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and enjoyed the run up until now. It really helps the channel out and helps increasing its reach a ton. Thanks a lot everybody. Once we're back in Hawaii, we make our way to the shop that sells weapons for the action star. The only problem with that is that it's guarded by a strong enemy who is level 24, so it's a couple of levels higher than our party is. And being low leveled in this game is quite the pain, as you can see by the amounts of damage the enemies are putting out. In fact, we even game over here a couple of times until we get the necessary RNG to beat the enemy, so while 5-star weapons are really nice to have, they don't help you a lot if enemies cut you down faster than you are able to recover. Eventually, we're able to win though, and with that we can get 3 steel nunchakus for our party. Technically, we could have also bought the Master's Nunchakus, but at this point they're not really necessary, and I really didn't want to spend all my money here, just in case we might need some quick cash later on, so the 5-star version should be more than enough for now. We continue our drinking links with our party, meet up with Eiji again, and go through a couple of more Genshi members with very little issues. Before we can get to the hotel, we also run into Yamai again, and another fight breaks out. Poisoned Cloudburst takes out the majority of his goons, and with Yamai also being weak to ice, Bourbon Buster does huge damage and we're able to get him down within a couple of hits. After meeting up with the Daidoji, we take out some more of Yamai's guys and are then ready to head into the Genshi HQ. We meet their leader Wong at the casino and shortly afterwards engage into the next battle, and this one is a little trickier. The boss loves to use effortless elegance, which increases his evasion by 3 stages, making it ridiculously hard to hit him with physical attacks. His Venom Slicer attack also deals pretty good damage, and with the enemies being pretty fast, we are running into issues rather quickly where Chitose gets knocked out, and both Tomisawa and Kiryu are on the verge of going down as well. Luckily we made ourselves some fruit cups at the bar earlier, so recovery is not too hard, and once Wong Tao is by himself, we also bring back Chitose. With only one enemy left, the incoming damage becomes quite a bit more manageable, though we are still struggling when it comes to actually hitting the boss. Once the evasion buff wears off, we can try to go back to dealing damage with Bourbon Buster before he reapplies it, so yeah, this is definitely a rather annoying battle. Towards the end, we managed to get a lucky hit in, including a follow-up, and this is already enough to win the battle. Being underleveled in this game definitely sucks, even more so in a setup like this, so before we continue on with the main story, it might be a good idea to grind a couple of levels in the underground dungeon. Anyways, we grab Wong Tao and try to escape after battling a couple of more Genshi, which are quickly taken care of. The biggest problem in fighting such large enemy groups is that we have to get the party fully drunk first before we're allowed to use any AoE skills. While Bourbon Buster in itself is really strong, it being single target only is definitely a disadvantage in situations like this. Luckily, most of those groups are not necessarily strong, and the enemies can usually be taken out with a single hit. Once we made our way through the Genshi army, we escape into the forest where our good old buddy Yamai turns up again and just sets the whole thing on fire. With Tomisawa gone for this battle, we only have 2 damaging characters, but luckily once again Poison Cloudburst is a huge help in doing good AoE damage as soon as we're back to being fully drunk. Yamai is still weak to ice, so just like before, Bourbon Buster does great numbers. Chitose tries to heal up the party in between, though Kiryu still almost goes down, surviving on a measly 46 HP. Once the party is able to take Yamai down, all there is left is clearing up the last couple of ads, and we're done here as well. Kiryu gets kidnapped by Yamai, but we get some more backup in the form of Namba and Adachi, who join the party as well. The first thing we do is to head to Aloha to change their jobs. We switch Ichiban, Tomisawa as well as Adachi to the Action Star. Unfortunately, Namba is not able to equip any of the jobs yet, as he needs bonding level 10 for the Desperado and bonding level 40 for the Action Star. We also switched Chitose to the Chio Dancer. While Idol would probably be the ideal job for her in terms of healing, we don't unlock that one until we get back to Yokohama, so this has to do for now. Now, as for the Action Star, similar to the Desperado, it has a drunk increasing skill in Drunken Fist, which is unlocked once you reach rank 15. Unlike Bourbon Buster, this one does not have an element attached to it, but its damage increases with the character's drunkenness level. So in cases where enemies are weak to ice, we will probably stick to Bourbon Buster, and for everything else, Drunken Fist might be the better DPS option overall. The Action Star also learns Relentless Dragon Dance in rank 18, which is a skill that doubles the damage of the character's next physical attack. While we are technically only allowed to use that when fully drunk since it's counted as a buff, this might still come in pretty handy when it comes to increasing our damage output. With that being said, we're now taking a few laps on the overworld for a couple of reasons. First of all, we obviously want to get our Action Star rank up in order to quickly get access to Drunken Fist, but we also want to increase our character spawns. Namba especially needs to get up to rank 10 before he's able to equip the first useful job. Unlike Adachi, he also has no bonding bingos in Hawaii, which means the only way to get his bond up at this point is by battling random encounters. And since I wanted to grind a few levels anyways, what better way to do this than to head back into the underground dungeon. Going through the first section should hopefully give us enough experience to not only get a couple of levels on everybody, but also enough bonding points on Namba so we can unlock the Desperado. Namba is going to leave the party later on again to go back to Japan with Kiryu, so ideally he already has access to a job with drunkenness skills at that point, in order to have at least 2 party members who can constantly attack when we get back to the Japan portion of the game. Namba himself can't really attack all too much, but his stashed bottle is a great skill for this portion of the game to keep everybody's drunk level up. The majority of encounters are easily taken care of with our 5-star weapons, so progression is rather smooth. The boss on floor 10 is not a big issue either, since the ads are weak to ice, and the boss itself is weak to fire, which we can exploit if we can get a regular turn during Tomisawa's wasted status. Ichiban's crit on the boss does over 1000 damage, and the last ad is quickly taken care of afterwards too. Since Namba is still not on bonding level 10, and the party can also use a couple of more levels, I thought about going through the first half of Sector 2 as well, but the enemies down here are level 32, and needless to say, this didn't quite work out like I was hoping for. Because of this, we battle a couple of more strong enemies on the overworld to get the last bits we need, and once Namba hits bonding level 10, we head straight to Aloha to put the Desperado on him. With all that in place, we continue on with the game's main story and head towards Yamai's territory in order to save Kiryu. We fight some more of his goons, and then head towards the cabaret where we fight even more of them. And I'm not gonna go into detail on each fight, because for the most part it's always the same. Bourbon Buster to get wasted, and AoE attacks while wasted to take out as many enemies at once as possible. This goes for pretty much all fights in here. With Namba reaching chop rank 12, he also gets access to Bourbon Buster during this, so we are back to having 3 characters ready to do damage at all times. We go through all optional battles in here as well for the extra experience, though I do have to admit that I feel slightly bad about beating up the group of goons that was celebrating their colleague's birthday, especially since this one is entirely optional and not needed to advance the story, but hey. They got drunk guys beating them up real bad, so I guess they got the whole bad birthday experience in the end. Once we reach the top, the party, who could have guessed it, once again has to fight Yamai. Now, while we watch the start of the battle here, I just quickly want to mention that Yamai is probably my favorite character in the entire game. His arc is just so well done, and I appreciate every single time we have to battle him. That being said, he is still weak to ice, so Poison Cloudburst is not only useful to take out his goons, but also put in some good numbers on the boss as well. Yamai, just like in other fights, usually gets 2 actions right after another, but the incoming damage is not that bad, and once we have taken out his goons, it's only a couple of more Bourbon Busters until we finish the battle and beat Yamai yet again. After the battle, we find out that Yamai actually took good care of Kiryu, and once he is back on his feet, him and Namba leave for Japan. We continue the drinking links we have unlocked in the meantime, and are also able to finish off the first one with Tomi. Even though the enemies are 4 levels higher than the party, they're no big deal, and we take care of them quickly. Once that is done, we return to Palicana to get some answers out of Bryce, and of course we have to fight both Barracudas and Pelicanas now. While the battle does take quite a while due to the amount of enemies, Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist take care of things, and once we cleared up all enemies, we switch back over to Japan where Kiryu and Namba reunite with Songhi. Like mentioned before, this is the reason why we wanted to have a drunk increasing attack ready on Namba, but unfortunately in the very first scripted battle, both him and Kiryu revert back to the default jobs, so we have to get everybody wasted with booze after all. Luckily this is not a big deal, and once we are done, we head straight to Aloha at Hello Work to switch the jobs back again. During this, we also unlock the Yokohama exclusive jobs, with the most interesting one being the host. The host has the skill Wanda Cocktail, which is unlocked at rank 22. This not only increases your drunk level by 1, but also makes the next magic attack do double damage. Unfortunately, we need bond level 20 on Namba to get it, but before we unlock it, we need to grab another very important item first, which is the Prestige. This is a 5-star host weapon which as a passive increases the character's damage depending on how drunk they are, so this is pretty much the perfect weapon for this kind of setup. The combination of Prestige and the Wanda Cocktail skill could potentially do huge damage, so we try to get all kinds of bonding bingos on Namba to quickly unlock the host job. We also unlock Kiryu's special Dragon of Tsushima abilities, though they are not going to be that important for now, as we want to mainly focus on the jobs that include drunk skills. With that, we headed to Saiko's club to get her to join the party, so we got a full setup of 4 characters again, though only 2 of them are going to be able to mostly do damage. Like mentioned before, female characters unfortunately have no jobs that influence the drunk status, and Saiko by default has a resistance to the drunk status as well, so she would probably not be that useful for it anyways. Since we are allowed to heal while sober though, she will probably equip the idol job later on and act as a healer for the most part. We make a trip around town to collect most of the bingo bondings, as well as the first couple of Kiryu's memories. Even though Kiryu will still work with the Desperado or Action Star for now, we will probably switch back to his default job later on, therefore we want to start collecting his stuff early as well. Kiryu gets a great karaoke performance in, we get the introduction to Part-Time Hero, do some drinking links, and switch Saiko to the idol once our bond is strong enough to unlock it. Since we got no weapons for the idol however, we head to the Love Magic shop to buy her a twinkling microphone, since we still need some decent magic stats if we want to have a proper means of healing. We also switch Namba to the host shop before continuing on with the main story. Like mentioned earlier, The combination of Prestige and Wonder Cocktail looks to have quite the damage potential, and Namba is probably the best candidate for a magical job. Once everything is done, we head into the former Tojo headquarters, which is now used by the Sereio. We meet up with Ebina and Sawashiro, meet up with Date, and get rid of a couple of drunk guys in order to unlock Kiryu's bucket list. We complete Namba's drinking link, and then finally advance the main story as we meet up with Amon to unlock Kiryu's special attack. The Tatara channel once again tries to screw with the party, and we have to go through a couple of Sereio members next. It's a shame that Songhee doesn't have any drunk increase in class because some of her skills are actually very useful, but wasting 3 turns until she can potentially attack is not going to cut it down the line, unfortunately. Once we beat all of the enemies, we are back to our other party in Honolulu, where we continue on with Ichiban. The escape sequence with the fights against the Ganshi and Barracudas is rather unspectacular. Even though it's only single target damage, Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist one-shot pretty much everything, and with 3 characters constantly attacking, those battles are not really an issue at all. The chase ultimately leads to Yamai joining us as a guest for the last few battles, and once we're done with those, we obviously have to fight him as well, because it's been like 5 minutes since the last battle against him. And guess what? Yamai and some of his goons are still weak to ice attacks, so at this point you probably know what that means. We're getting to the point where some of his ads are even able to take more than 1 attack though, and while this isn't anything dangerous in particular, it is definitely something to keep in mind. Yamai's attacks for the most part are not that dangerous, so with Chitose healing, we're usually on the safe side and don't have to worry too much about potentially game overing. Once the ads are gone, we can focus on the boss itself. Like mentioned just before, he's still weak to ice attacks, so Bourbon Buster once again does a good chunk of damage per hit. Occasionally he will put up a guard, but luckily Drunken Fist can just break that, and we continue on like before until Yamai is down once again. After watching a couple of cutscenes, we return to Aloha to switch Tomisawa to host, as well as start off the Desperado on Adachi and the idol on Chitose. Tomisawa, similarly to Namba, is a great mage, so the host job is going to fit him well, and since we unlocked the idol in Yokohama, we can now also equip it on Chitose to make her a proper healer as well. The setups on both parties are probably going to involve 3 male characters acting as DPS, with Saiko or Chitose playing the healing supporter role with the idol job. We continue on with the main story and finally get some information about Akani's and Lani's whereabouts. We get the 2 of them to Yamai's place, and just when we were about to rescue them, Eiichi screws with the party as well, and we have to battle a couple of more Barracudas, and here you can see the power of the host job. Poisoned Cloudburst, when fully drunk with the Prestige equip, takes out almost all enemies with a single hit, so the battle is over rather quickly. Unfortunately, they managed to kidnap Lani, and with that, we head back over to Japan and Kiryu's side of things. At Survive, we meet up with both Jungi-han and Shao, who also joins the party, and with that, we switch out Songhee permanently. Although I really like her, Shao as a male character gets access to both Desperado and Action Star, so he will make for a much better fit. Saiko stays in the party as healer, with the 3 males now becoming permanent DPS characters. We change Shao to the Action Star since he can equip that one from the get-go, and then head into the Yokohama dungeon. This is the Japan equivalent of the Hawaii dungeon, so we will use that to get some levels, seeing as the Japan side of things has much stronger enemies compared to Hawaii. The dungeon itself is not really special for the most part again, as it's just a bunch of regular enemies that we can easily dispose using Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist. It's only a couple of levels until Shao reaches rank 15 and learns Drunken Fist as well, so going forward we now have 3 DPS characters in Japan as well. The mid-dungeon boss on floor 5 is annoying since some attacks can stun the party, which not only makes them unable to act, but also wipes their drunk status again. But other than that, it's not much different from the other fights, so once again we use Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist to punch our way through the enemies. After we're done, we continue working on our party's drinking links and get back into the dungeon again. We could theoretically continue on with the story already, but I figured having a couple of extra levels certainly won't hurt, so we go through the second half of Sector 1 as well. The extra equipment we get from there is definitely a very useful bonus. Once we're done, we head back to the bar to finish off Saiko's drinking link, and then finally continue on with the main story by going to the Sereio's warehouse to talk to Sawashiro. After punching our way through a couple of more Sereios, we now have to face off against him, and of course he is accompanied by even more Sereio members. Most of them are weak to ice, so we can usually take them out with 2 Bourbon Busters. Sawashiro himself resists ice, so Drunken Fist is the way to go here. His attacks deal decent amount of damage, but nothing that we're not able to keep up with when it comes to healing. Grinding a few levels in the dungeon certainly seems to have paid off here. When Sawashiro doesn't use the cane, he also becomes vulnerable to fire, so ideally we get a fully drunk Namba to cast fire magic for big damage. Even with a neutral hit though, Namba does huge numbers with Roast Stinger when fully drunk, doing almost 1000 damage, and it's only a matter of a few more turns until Sawashiro is down and we win the fight. We throw him in the water, only to meet up with him at Ichiban's place later on, and with that we return back to Hawaii and Ichiban's party. Chitose temporarily leaves the party due to feeling guilty about being blackmailed into screwing the party, so we head to the club to get her back and also get some revenge on Eiichi. The gang members are quickly disposed with Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist, and once Chitose rejoins the party, we head back into the Hawaii dungeon to also get some more levels on the party. Just like in Yokohama before, we go through the first half of Sector 2 to gain some additional levels and also some extra equipment. The enemies for the most part aren't really worth mentioning, as Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist once again give us great coverage to deal with pretty much every fight. Once we're finished, we find out that some of Yamai's men have turned on him, so we head back to the cabaret to check it out. After getting rid of the first couple of his goons, we escape into a nearby construction site where we have to go through several more waves of the Yamai Syndicate. Again, Bourbon Buster against Ice Weak enemies, and Drunken Fist against everything else easily takes care of the majority of enemies in either 1 or 2 hits. On the top, we have to fight the heavy machinery, and while this could be a rather annoying battle, luckily both of the excavators are weak to ice attacks, so Bourbon Buster, once again, takes care of things, oftentimes dealing over 1000 damage to the enemies. Man, I really start to sound like a broken record, but I mean, facts are, Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist are just really strong. Anyways, the bosses can occasionally hit hard, but luckily Chitose can easily heal up everybody, and once the first excavator is down, the battle is pretty much won already. It's just a few more Bourbon Busters until excavator number 2 is down as well, and we use them to crash into the cabaret. Here the party gets split up into 2 groups. On the one side we have Ichiban and Chitose, and on the other one we have Namba and Adachi. Luckily most of the enemies once again can be taken down with 1 or 2 hits, so once Namba and Adachi got rid of everyone on their part, they rejoin the other 2 to finish off whatever is left. After going through some more of Yamai's guys, we reach the top of the cabaret where Eiichi leaves a message for the party, and we have to go through some more Barracudas. We can once again easily take out the first wave of Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist, but once the second wave arrives, we are running into a little issue. Additionally to having to fight more Barracuda members, there are also 2 poison gas generators on the field now which perma-poison the entire party, so our first priority is to get rid of those to prevent the character's HP from dropping even further. Luckily 3 hits are enough to destroy them, while Chitose tries to keep up with the healing considering we get attacked by 5 enemies at the same time as well. Once both units are gone, the battle becomes much more manageable, and it's basically like every other group fight as well. Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist to take them out one by one until only the big guys left. We occasionally have to heal MP to keep up attacking and healing, but other than that we just continue on like always until the enemy is down and the fight is won. Akane is saved for now, and with that we return to Kiryu and his party back in Yokohama. Before heading into Kamurocho, we go through the first half of Yokohama's Sector 2 dungeon to get some more levels in. It's not very long until we have to fight Dojima, Majima and Saejima, so I want to make sure we got the proper levels for those. Just like before, the fights in here are not that special for the most part, and Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist take care of everything. With our equipment, we got a really solid setup so we can punch our way through the majority of enemies without any issues. Once we're done with that, we head to Kamurocho to go through another few more battles. And while we're already here, we also get all of Kiryu's memories and also fight the majority of part-time hero enemies. I am pretty sure we don't have to max Kiryu's stats, but I never got around to completing all of them in my casual playthrough, so if we're already here, might as well. At La Marche, we also get a 6-star weapon for the Desperado and the Action Star to further boost our attack. We will keep the prestige on the host since its damage scales with the character's drunkenness level, and we can always upgrade it at Julie's workshop later on anyways. Back in Yokohama, we also complete the last couple of part-time hero requests and get the last couple of available memories, and then switch Kiryu back to his default job since we're getting to the point where leveling up the Dragon of Tsushima will quickly make him catch up on damage compared to the other jobs with 6-star weapons. We also switch Namba to Action Star temporarily for Drunken Fist and give Saiko the Konoichi job for high agility. Endgame bosses tend to get a lot of turns, so I hope that the high agility from the Konoichi is a good way to counteract that and keep up with healing later on. We finish off both Shao's and Songhee's drinking links, and then go through the first couple of Date's bucket list events before returning to the Yokohama dungeon to go through the second half of Sector 2. Again, it is pretty much the same as before, with Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist taking care of things, while Saiko occasionally heals up, so let's just quickly skip towards the end. Once we're done with everything, the party is already level 45, so I think we're good to advance the main story now. We meet up with Dojima, Majima and Saejima, and since they don't want to help us, we decide to fight them, and this was probably one of the fights I was most scared of. Majima opens up the battle by using Hanya's spirit, which increases his evasion by 3 stages. To add to this, Dojima likes to use Akala's spirit, which also increases everybody's defense and willpower by 1 stage. Saejima is not one for big buffs for the most part, but just prefers to beat the crap out of the party with his hands. We managed to get off a fully drunk Essence of Rose Typhoon with Namba, which does good damage to all 3 enemies. Since Majima is weak to fire, I decided to target him first. Just like in the previous game, he likes to summon doppelgangers when he gets lower on HP, but luckily those can usually be taken out with 1 or 2 hits. The biggest issue is probably Majima's evasion buff, which makes it pretty hard to hit him with physical attacks, but luckily he has to reapply that occasionally, which gives us a good chance to get a couple of hits in. Since the 3 of them do inflict quite some damage on the party as well, Saiko is usually busy trying to heal, but otherwise we're able to control the battle rather well. Being 3 levels above the enemies certainly helps a lot here as well. During fully drunk phase, we want to get regular turns to deal extra fire damage with either Rose Stinger or Burning Arrow, and Majima is the first one to go down in the one-on-one battle with Kiryu shortly afterwards. Once Majima is down, we focus on Saejima since he's weak to ice, and with Bourbon Buster at our disposal, you probably already know what that means. Like mentioned before, Saejima is mostly about putting out damage, so there are much less shenanigans when it comes to get damage on him compared to Majima. The occasional guard can easily be broken with Drunken Fist, and we continue on pummeling him. Saejima is the tankiest of the 3, so it does take quite a while until we get him down, but for the most part we're not in any danger, and eventually he goes down in the one-on-one against Kiryu as well. Luckily, Saiko's turn came up right afterwards, because Kiryu was put to 1 HP by Saejima, and if Dojima would have followed up on that, there is a good chance we could have game overed here. With Dojima now being the only one left in this battle, this is basically won. We don't really have anything to hit his weakness with, but that doesn't matter as Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist is more than enough to get him down, and once Kiryu wins the last one-on-one showdown, we finish the battle and continue on. Back in Yokohama, we start upgrading our weapons, mainly the prestige to get some more attack and magic onto it. At first I wasn't sure whether to max it out or not, but in the end I went with a plus 30 in order to unlock the first 2 brands. As for the brands, we can only use the minor ones at the moment since I forgot to upgrade the facility level in Hawaii, so we put the Seal of Flames and Snow into it to slightly buff our elemental damage. Once we're done with everything, we return to the Sereio headquarters to snipe Ebina and Sawashiro during the livestream. Unfortunately, the entire thing was pre-recorded, and after going through a couple of more Sereio grunts, we now have to battle Narasaki. You might have noticed that we skipped quite a few mini-bosses here, and the main reason for that is that there really isn't much to talk about. Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist do incredible damage, and we're also out-leveling the opposition quite a bit, so we basically one-shot everything that isn't a major enemy. The Narasaki fight for the most part isn't much different either. His goons are able to take 2 to 3 hits, but even with an attack buff on their part, we never run into any dangerous situations. Narasaki himself is weak to electricity, so we throw a jellyfish juice with Namba when we get the opportunity, but other than that, it's just the same old thing. Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist until the enemy is down, and we continue on. With Narasaki out of the way, we once again switch back to the Hawaiian party. Previously, Ichiban and friends were able to rescue Akane, but Lani is still out there somewhere, so obviously we have to rescue her. Before we do that though, it's time for some more drinking links as we complete the link on Adachi. We also would have a strong enough bond to complete Chitose, but since we need to advance the story first, we cannot do that until later. In order to get ready for the upcoming segments, we return into the underground dungeon again as well. We have only done the first half of Sector 2 the last time, so I thought it would be a good time to get the second one done now. Again, nothing much to talk about here. Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist take care of things, and with the boss's ads being weak to ice, we can one-shot most of them and focus on the boss itself once they're out of the way. At Julie's, we invest to max her facility rank, and then head back into the dungeon to clear the entirety of Sector 3 as well. Robo Michio can be a bit annoying with his attacks, especially with Destructo Beam, which does quite some damage to the party, but luckily it is once again weak to ice attacks, so Bourbon Buster does pretty good numbers, and it's only a matter of time before we win the battle and complete the regular portion of the underground dungeon in Hawaii. As a reward, we also get Ichiban's unique armor, and considering we have gotten more than enough levels now, we are ready to advance the main story. At the docks we meet up with Tomisawa's old buddy, who is also one of Bryce's spies, and after taking care of them, they kill themselves and we have to go through some more Polycana while trying to escape. Again, nothing special to note in those fights. Drunken Fist and Bourbon Buster as always take care of everything. Once we successfully escaped, Chungi-han arrives and also promptly joins the party. And while I am generally a big fan of Chungi, he is not going to see any use in this challenge. He joins in really late at a point where the majority of our party and jobs are already set, and considering we completed the dungeon before he joined, he's also quite a few levels lower than the rest of the party, so we will just stick with our current setup. We finish off Chitose's drinking link, get some of Chungi's bonding bingos, and then upgrade the 6-star weapons we got at La Marche earlier to plus 30 to unlock the first 2 brands on those as well. With the fully upgraded facility rank, we now got access to all brands, so we put a Seal of Force X, which greatly increases damage of blunt attacks, as well as a Seal of Concentration X, which increases critical rate into it. We max out the Prestige and also put Seal of Flames and Snow X in for increased fire and ice damage, as well as the Seal of Miracles, which makes it possible for magic attacks to crit. I am banking on Magic Cocktail in combination with either Essence of Rose Typhoon or Essence of Champagne Wave to deal huge damage to fire or ice weak bosses later on. We get the first couple of drinking links on Chungi, and then head back into District 5 to sneak into the ship that's supposed to head towards Nele Island. The Barracudas are easily taken care of with our usual strategy, and once we reach the docks, we run into Dwight again. Thanks to completing the dungeon earlier, we are quite a bit overleveled, so I really don't see us having any issues here at all. Once we have taken out all the goons, we can focus on Bryce, who's still weak to both ice and fire, so you probably know what that means. I wanted to set up a concentrated Essence of Rose Typhoon, but with Bourbon Buster doing huge damage to the boss, we are able to get him down before we are even finished setting up. Lani is saved, and thanks to Yamai, we have a ship to get her to the Japanese Coast Guard. Before we get there though, of course we have to battle Dwight one last time. There is also the gimmick with the lingering shark that strikes when somebody gets too close, but this is not really something that we need to pay attention to. Dwight is still weak to both fire and ice, so we use Burning Arrow during fully drunk turns to deal damage and also take out some goons in the process. Once most of them are down, we focus on the boss again with Bourbon Buster, which hits for over 2000 damage on critical hits. Dwight occasionally resummons some of his ads, but at this point he's pretty much done already, and once he's down, we clear up the remaining enemies easily and win the battle. We meet up with Date, get the last bits of backstory on Yamai, and then reunite the entire party in Yokohama. With that, we are now in the last chapter of the game. We have that talk with Saiko, and then Ichiban and his party leave again to face Bryce in Hawaii. Since we haven't maxed out Chungi-han's drinking bond yet though, we still need to do that before we head for the final showdown. Even with all the bonding bingos, we get nowhere near maxing him out, so we take a slight detour and head into the club. This is easily the most effective way to quickly get your party's bonds up, and after a few sessions, Chungi is now also ready to have his drinking bond maxed out. With that, we are now ready to head for Nelly Island for the final showdown against Bryce. Before we even reach the island though, we have to battle the giant shark from earlier first. Thanks to all party members being fully drunk, we can use Ichiban's ultimate tag team attack, which already hits the boss for over 4000 damage. Unfortunately, we can't grapple the boss, so Drunken Fist isn't available, but we can still resort to Bourbon Buster, which deals reduced damage due to the shark also resisting ice attacks. Even through the resist though, our attacks still hit for about 800 damage, so we have little issues and are able to take out the shark just a couple of turns later. On Nelly Island, we have to go through a crap ton of Polycana enemies, but the strategy is pretty much always the same. Bourbon Buster on ice weak ones and Drunken Fist on everybody else. With those two attacks, we can easily punch our way through the island without any issues. The party gets locked into the chapel or whatever thing that may be, and now we have to go through the Guardian of the Cave next. And this is probably one of the most annoying battles in terms of mechanics in the entire game. The tentacles potentially grabbing party members and swallowing them is something I really wanted to avoid, so we went into the battle with the entire party fully drunk, and after resetting due to a very unlucky start where we didn't get a single action in, we can once again use Ichiban's ultimate tag team attack to take out both tentacles and also get the boss down to half HP within a single hit. Again, we cannot use Drunken Fist due to not being able to grapple the boss, but unlike the shark, Giant Squid is neutral to ice damage, so Bourbon Buster still deals decent numbers. After 2 turns, the tentacles respawn, but the boss is on low HP already, and we're able to take it down before the tentacles could potentially make the fight much more complicated than it needs to be. With that, we are about to head into the final battle on the Hawaiian side. Before we get to Bryce himself, we have to go through 2 waves of Polycanon warriors. The majority of them can be taken out with a single hit, though Bryce occasionally throws in a grenade to spice things up or summons additional enemies onto the field. Once both waves are down, the actual fight with Bryce begins. Of course, he's accompanied by several enemies, and due to the party just using the tag team in the squid fight before, we have to take them out individually now. Depending on the party member attacking, it is a damage range whether we can one-shot them or not, but with Bryce not doing a lot of damage early in the battle and Chitose constantly healing, we're never in any danger. Once all of them are gone, we can focus on our main target, and guess what? Bryce is also one of those enemies that is weak to ice damage, so Bourbon Buster for the win. That's it, that's the strategy. Chitose heals whenever necessary, and occasionally we need to throw items for MP recovery, but that's literally all there is to that fight. Bryce's attacks usually don't deal more than 200 to 300 damage, which we can easily out-heal with Chitose, so we just continue on with Bourbon Buster until he is down, and part 1 of the final chapter is over. Chitose livestreams the happenings on Nelly Island to the world, and we head over to Yokohama to take care of Ebina. Before we head for Millennium Tower though, we still have to do a couple of things. We complete the last couple of memories to max out Kiryu, and then head down the Yokohama Underground to clear out Sector 3. Now, we're not going to waste too much time here because it's practically the same as before. The final boss, Udomaru, can be a bit annoying since he can potentially stun party members, but other than that, he's no issue either, and we can easily beat him to complete the dungeon. Thanks to all the resources we got during this segment, we can now also max out our 6-star weapons and put the last brand in there, which is the Seal of Vigor, which further boosts critical damage. With that, we are ready for the final dungeon of the game as we head into the Millennium Tower. As always, we have to go through a crap ton of Sereio members on the way, and also have a little reunion with Dojima, Majima and Saejima from earlier, but other than that, there isn't much to mention here again, as we're working our way through the crowd with our usual attack setup. Once we punched our way through everything, we are now ready to head into the final boss fight of the game against Ebina, and oh boy was I afraid of this one. Ebina can put characters into rage or sleep with his attacks, so we make sure to equip accessories that null some of those things. In my casual playthrough, I was quite a bit underleveled going into this fight and struggled a ton, so I wanted to make sure to come in here prepared properly, and I think I might have gone slightly overboard, but let's look into it. In phase 1, Ebina is weak to electricity and pierce, which is some of the weakest coverage in our setup, so we just go into it with the usual Drunken fists. Namba prepares the Wonder Cocktail for a potential big magic attack later, and we go to work. Ebina's attacks are way less intimidating than expected at first, and he also gets way less turns in than he did in my casual playthrough, so I think it's easy to see how much of a difference a few levels can make. Ideally, I want Ebina to also attack Kiryu, since he will counter every hit when perfectly guarded for some extra damage. Drunken Fist can deal up to 2000 damage, so it's not long until we hit phase 2 of the battle, and guess what? Well, you might have already guessed it, but Ebina in phase 2 is also weak to ice, so Bourbon Buster it is once again. Ebina in phase 2 gets access to some nastier attacks like Fall from Grace, which does quite some damage to the party, but it's nothing that we aren't able to out-heal, so for the most part he's not any threat at all. And I really wish there was more to talk about in this battle, but that's all there is to it really. Essence of Champagne Wave deals 2500 damage, and we're able to beat Ebina shortly afterwards and successfully complete the challenge. Like mentioned before the fight, it definitely looks like I over-prepared by quite a bit after struggling a ton in my casual playthrough, but both final segments went really smooth for the most part. So yeah, that is it everybody. We beat Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth while being raging alcoholics pretty much the entire game. This run was a lot of fun, especially the early portions were quite tricky at times, but once we got access to the chops and our first drunk-inducing moves, things quickly changed. Admittedly, I was not expecting Bourbon Buster and Drunken Fist to be nearly as powerful as they were. Sure, we had a really strong setup as well, but I did think we would struggle quite a bit more than we did. With that being said, special thanks go out to this video's top supporters Norrell, Laura Nemeth, Shurka and Matthew Frag, as well as all other channel members and patrons. Becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to all videos among small other perks, so if you want to support the channel even more, there are plenty of ways to do so. That is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the run as much as I did, and I hope to see you all next time for another challenge run. Until then, take care.